Welcome to the technical section of this course where I'll be talking about how your camera works and covering the most important technical terms like white balance, frame rates, resolution, shutter speed, aperture, ISO, and more. But before we dive into these terms, I want to take you on a tour of a DSLR camera so you can get an idea of where everything is at, how to navigate your way around it, and how to change all of your settings. Now, I'm not going to walk you through how to use every brand of camera and every model of every brand. Each camera will have different menus and different buttons in different spots, but these principles will apply to all cameras. The camera I'm going to be walking you through today is the Canon 5D Mark III. So first, let's turn the camera on, and I'll start by taking you through the menu. This first section is talking about photography, so I'm not going to cover this in depth. I like to set my image quality for photos to RAW because that is the highest quality image it can take. Moving over to the next tab, the only thing I'd really worry about in here is the white balance. Your white balance controls the color temperature of your video footage, and I have a whole nother video covering just this topic, so go ahead and watch that to learn more about white balance. In the next tab, the only setting I would change here is the picture style. And again, I have a full video covering all the differences between the different picture styles that the camera comes with and how to set your own custom picture styles. So check out that video to learn more about how that affects your image. In the next tab, the only settings I really change are the movie recording size and the sound recording. When you click on movie recording size, it's going to allow you to change your resolution and your frame rates. And again, I have two separate videos covering both of those terms. Next to those numbers, you'll see an all-I and an IPB. Basically, all you need to know is that all is going to be a higher quality image, and IPB is going to give you a compressed, lower quality image. So the only times I use IPB is when I want to save memory on my card and don't care as much about the quality of the image. When you click on the sound recording button, it takes you to your sound levels, and I would keep this setting on auto unless you know what you're doing and have a specific microphone that you're using, and then you'll set it to manual like we talked about in the audio equipment video. Moving on to the purple and blue sections, these settings are more geared towards photography. I've personally never changed any of those settings, so I wouldn't worry about those. So moving on to the yellow section, the only thing I really use here is format card. And this is where you'll go to empty your card. And I personally format my card before every shoot so that I have a fresh empty SD or CF card to work with. But make sure you back up all the footage that's on this card before pushing format. Going to the next tab, the only setting I change here is the LCD brightness. And I like to set my brightness to a 5. Because I've found that to be the most accurate reading of what my image is actually going to look like. When I'm outside, I like to push it up to 7 just because I can't see my screen very well outside. But be careful when bumping up your brightness all the way to 7 because it's going to make your image look brighter than it actually is, and you'll tend to underexpose your actual image because your screen is too bright. And I always keep it on manual because I don't like when auto adjusts it automatically for me because it doesn't always guess correctly what I want. Moving over to the next tab, the only thing I use here is sensor cleaning. If you're seeing specks of dust in your footage, then you probably want to clean your sensor, and so this is where you'd come to do that. And moving on to the orange section, there's no settings I've ever changed in here. And in the green section, you can customize your own buttons, but I've never used that either. So that's about it for the menu. Let's push our start stop button now so we can see the live view on our screen. And to decide what you want to appear on your display, you come up here and push the info button. So when I click it once, it shows my shutter speed, aperture, ISO, and battery life on the bottom. If I click it twice, it'll show my white balance, my picture profile, the card I'm recording on, the resolution, the frame rate, and how much time I have left to record on the card. When you click the info button a third time, it brings up a histogram, which we'll talk about in the exposure video. But this is a tool that helps you read the exposure of your image. When you click it a fourth time, it brings up a level. When it shows green, it means your image is level. And obviously when it's red, it means it's unlevel. And when you click it a fifth time, everything goes away and all you can see is your image. I personally like to see all of my settings, so I keep all of that on my screen. Let's take a look now at some of the buttons on top of the camera. This guy over here is mostly for photography. It allows you to switch between different shooting modes, so I'm not going to explain the differences with those. For video, there will either be a video option or you'll set it to M for manual, which will give you full manual control over your exposure. Coming over to this side, you have WB, which stands for white balance. So that's the button you'll click to adjust your white balance. And again, there's a whole separate video talking about all these different presets and when you'd want to use them, so stay tuned for that. The second button over is a photography feature, which will allow you to change your autofocus settings, so don't worry about that for video. The next button over will allow you to change your ISO, and again, we'll talk about how your ISO affects your image in videos to come. And then the far right button turns on a little light that allows you to see your screen on top. This button up here allows you to use your autofocus and take photos. And this little spin wheel controls your shutter speed. So when you look down here, you can see the shutter speed changing as I spin that wheel. Again, we'll talk about that in the exposure video. Moving on now to the buttons on the back of the camera. This guy switches between video mode and photo mode. And obviously this start and stop button will stop and start the recording of your video. These buttons over here are photo functions, so I wouldn't worry about those. This joystick allows you to move the square in your display, which is where your image will be grabbing focus. I just keep that in the middle. When you push this Q button, it allows you to change the settings of your resolution and frame rate. This big spin wheel is going to be changing your aperture, which again we'll talk about in the exposure video. Coming over to the left side, this top button will allow you to change your picture profile. This rate button doesn't currently have a function. The magnifying glass allows you to zoom in ×5 and ×10. Which is a great tool for grabbing focus. This play button allows you to play back your footage. And then using your spin wheel and the set button, you can choose to play back in slow motion, go back to the beginning of the clip, go to the end of the clip, and to exit out of the clip. And this garbage can button obviously allows you to delete clips. After pushing the display button, if you push your info button, it will give you different options of settings that you want to see when playing back your footage. So that's pretty much all the settings I use when navigating through my camera. Like I said, I'm gonna go into depth on a lot of those aspects so you get a better idea of what all those settings do. But first I wanted to show you where you can find those settings within your camera. So that's it for camera navigation. If you guys have any further questions, please let me know.